without that idea of like, I'm awesome and I'm doing life and I'm going to be great and I can do hard things and I can get through these challenges because I'm awesome, because I have these strengths, because I have all this stuff inside of me. I just want everybody to know that they have it in them and that they can be in alignment and they can live fulfilled. It's not about a paycheck, and it's not about the neighborhood you live in and the car you drive. It's not about any of those things. It's about who you know yourself to be and being proud of that person.
Back for another episode of the Wellness Dojo podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Craig, and I'm really excited to welcome today's guest, Jennifer Barroll, aka Jenny B. She is a speaker, host, and entertainer using her background in acting, media, and get this, stand-up comedy to engage audiences, inspiring growth through leadership and communication skills. Welcome to the show, Jenny B.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. I'm so excited to pick your brain today. Um, yeah, how have you been, first of all?
I've been great. I've been really busy, which is always a good thing. Never a complaint. Doing lots of traveling and lots of speaking and meeting amazing people and being able to offer up some insight and some inspiration. Most of the speaking that I do is in the corporate sector. So this past month, I've been on the road and doing a ton of keynotes, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, you were just telling me about some amazing opportunities, getting to stay at some pretty cool resorts and present at some very cool resorts and just kind of enjoying the journey a little bit too, right?
Yeah, there are definitely some perks with the job for sure when you get to go and do a keynote in hot destinations and have a resort where there's a swim up bar. That's always nice after you do a keynote to go jump in the pool and order a margarita.
Yeah, exactly, right? That's awesome. I want to talk a little bit, I want to give some background to our audience a little bit. Can you tell us like how this all came to be? Like where did you start? How did you actually get to this place where now you can actually go and inspire people in some of like the most beautiful places in the world even?
Well, I mean, it's a long, twisty journey, like most people's journeys are. I certainly did not take a straight shot out of, adolescence and or even high school and have a clear picture necessarily of what I was going to be doing and or that I would end up here. I didn't even know that here was a place. So I really just on the way, I followed my gut. That might sound a bit cliche, but I did always have a sense of knowing what was in alignment with me as far as what fit with me, what fit with my desires and some goals that I had or strengths that I knew I had, which in some cases may have been a little bit unconventional. Like I wasn't really good at math, but I was great at talking and making people laugh. And so, my journey through school was interesting in the sense that most of my report cards are always about, Jenny needs to stop a little less talking, a little more listening. There isn't a comedy show in the middle of algebra class kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was a good student and got good grades, be it that the math part was definitely a struggle of mine. But I wasn't the academic, I wasn't the person. I certainly had friends that were just really book smart and really had a clear picture of I'm going to go to university right after and I'm going to get this degree and then I'm going to do this and this and this. And interestingly enough, that was my brother. He was very clear on what he was going to do. And he graduated and went to Queen's University in Canada and did his commerce degree and then was boom, right into a corporate trajectory. And I, on the other hand, went traveling after high school. I packed my bags and took off around the world by myself at 18 years old and learned a lot on the road. And I would say that actually created in me a sense of really knowing that I could carve my own path, there were parents, like my parents were divorced, and I had four very active parents that also had opinions about what I should and shouldn't be doing. And I didn't really follow what they said because they well-intentioned, obviously, coming from a place of love, just didn't want me to be broke for the rest of my life. And when I came back from traveling, I actually went to theater school. So, not really hitting it high on the, like, I'm going to be a super success and you're not going to have to financially worry about me chapter. But through theater school, that was, again, I got another phase where I really learned a lot about myself and was able to hone in on some of those unconventional skills that I was talking about, and met some amazing people and mentors. And out of that, I acted for a little while out of school, but then kind of had a wake up call to say, this is good, but it's not it. And then I took a step into communications and went back to school to U of C and did communications, where I thought I was going to go into media and be into news broadcasting and that sort of thing. And then did end up getting into, I had a radio show and did some stuff on television. And again, it was kind of that, this is good, but this isn't it. And again, following just that internal part of me. I'm in my 20s and I had that just burning sense of I can create this life. I'm young and I can try new things. It doesn't have to be a straight shot. So coming out of media, where I was doing a lot of writing, I ended up getting a job in the marketing sector as a technical writer for a tech startup here locally that was based out of Calgary and Hong Kong and Los Angeles. And it was just one of those opportunities that almost fell in my lap, but I said yes to. There were a lot of things I didn't know and could have stopped and said, I'm not experienced enough and I don't know, but I just said yes. And I leaned in, and I'm a quick study. So I really was able to carve a path for myself then in the marketing and business space. With that company, I worked for about 6 years, and we got to do some really amazing things and work with massive clients all around the world. And after I left there, I started my own business in the marketing and communications space. I was doing events, and that kind of tripped over into websites and branding and internal communications. And I was really succeeding. It was working. But again, I had that same feeling of, this is great. Now, by now I own a house and I'm driving a BMW and that sort of thing. But I was like, this isn't it. This isn't all the way it. And so in my spare time, not that I had a lot of it, but I started to volunteer for the Calgary police through a program called Cops for Kids. And in that program, I was going into schools doing assemblies. I would get to go. You remember when, like, grade 3, when you were so thankful that math class was canceled because you get to shuffle into the gymnasium and sit on the floor and listen to somebody speak about something. Yeah. Well, I was the person coming in to get you out of math class. And this program, basically, we talked about how to make good choices in your life. And we worked with mostly elementary and junior high schools. And through that program, we had this idea to also create like a video. And I had some video production in my background. So I worked with this team that I was already kind of doing some projects with in the marketing space. And we produced a little mini movie, like a PSA, which actually won a Rosie Award while we were doing it. And I loved that space. I loved doing the work that I was doing. I was also running my marketing company, and I was exhausted. I mean, I was not sleeping. I was just going from thing to thing to thing, traveling a lot for work as well. And just, I knew that I was coming to a crossroads where I was going to have to make a decision, but I didn't really know how to make that decision. And two things happened. One day, my best friend, Nicole, she said to me, if you could do anything right now, what would you do? Like, money is no object, time is no object. Like, what would that be? And I said, I think I'd go back to school and get my psychology degree. And she said, okay. I said, but that's impossible because I have all these other things going on. And long story short, what I ended up doing was just actually working out of the university one day. She, at her suggestion, she says, why don't you just go down, sit in the school, like do some of your work from there. And maybe one day you'll go in and talk to admin and see if there's adult courses you can take, whatever. And of course that ended up happening. And I ended up enrolling to do my psychology degree at Mount Royal University. And about a year and a half into that, I had a client who was a psychologist, and I was doing a rebrand for him. And he started doing his thing with me, and we were talking about his brand, but then he switched it, as psychologists have the great talent of doing, and switched it into me. Like, what is it? What's going on with you? What do you want? Is this your thing? Is this really the big picture for your life? And of course, I ended up kind of opening up to him and telling him about what I had wanted to do. And he said, I want to match you up with a friend of mine who just reached out to me conveniently with a program that she just started called In the Lead. And it's not even started yet. She just actually created it on paper for a project that she was doing. She was doing her MBA, and it was on a page. Like, it was literally an idea on a page, and she needs somebody to help her get it off the ground. So I met with Denise, and it was instant. There was no question in my mind, in my heart, about the fact that this was my next step. This program that she was creating was for youth at risk in high schools that would never put their hands up to say, I'm a great leader, I'm somebody, I'm going somewhere. These are kids that, might have some history with the law. They might have made some bad choices along the way. They might have some challenges and some struggles like anxiety or whatever. They might be young moms, whatever it is. Like, there's something, challenging, struggling going on in their lives where society has been labeling them as a misfit or somebody who's just not going to make it. And they would get nominated into this program, not for their flaws or their challenges, but for the other things around them, the good stuff inside of them. So that might be true that they've been in trouble with the law, but also they are a great brother, and their mom is a single mom, and they work a second job to help pay their rent, and they take their little brother to school every day. And they're good kids. They just don't have any positive adult influences in their lives. And this program actually matched them one-to-one with adult mentors, if you will. We called them coaches that came from the corporate sector. So long story short, I dive in with this. I figure out how to dissolve my business over about 6 or 7 months. I handed off clients to other people in the sector and jumped in head first. We co-created this program, worked with some amazing individuals, launched it, and started seeing unbelievable results right out of the gate. Now, one of the pieces in this was the mentors, the coaches, they came from corporate Calgary. So they were lawyers, they were engineers, they were admin, they were like anything and everything across the board, accountants. And that was how we got our funding, mostly was through those corporations would pay to participate. And it was a leadership development program on the corporate side, just as much as it was for the young people on the school side. And it was through that, I did that for about 8 years. And it was through that I really started to find a niche with the way we were teaching what we were teaching. And it almost came to a surprise to us how impactful this content was, these ideas, these thoughts around leadership, how impactful that was in the corporate sector. We knew it was going to have an impact with the kids, but we were shocked a little bit at the beginning, especially at how much this was transforming how leaders were showing up for their teams at work. And then how they were showing up, how these adults were showing up in their lives with their wives and their kids and their families and their neighbors. And that was when I really started to understand that I had a voice in that sector and that there was a meaningful message that I had to share in that space. And that also there was a gap in that space for this kind of teaching. And I'm not saying that I've, there's nothing new under the sun. This is content that you can probably, fill your cart in chapters with books about all of this stuff. But I think bringing it together in this way with a healthy dose of humor, this is kind of naturally who I am in an audience, engaging and connecting and being able to bring the relevant. And this is part of that comedian in me is, what's funny is the thing that you connect to, right? You don't laugh at something if you don't resonate with what's being said. Like, oh, I've done that too, or, oh, I've been there too, or I've thought that too. It's just a comedian is saying it in a way that you've never really put it together. And you're like, that is hilarious. So being able to bring that into the world of leadership development and training has been amazing, not just for me as far as fulfillment is concerned, but amazing for the results and the feedback and the lessons learned. And I did find out actually that our brains actually absorb more information. You can retain more information while you're laughing. When you're in that space, whatever's firing in your brain, when you're finding something funny, if wisdom added to that, it sticks. And I've run into people years down the road that have been in one of my talks and they remember a story that I told or something that I brought up. And I think it's because I've been able to infuse that humor into everything I do. So now I'm on this path. I've been speaking professionally, exclusively for about 5 years now, dabbled in with a little bit of marketing here and there, thanks to COVID, but it's been amazing. Yeah. So I love what I do. I'm in a sweet spot right now and really enjoying this journey of using all of my skills and strengths and experience and being able to serve and help and support and connect with people.
Yeah, there's so much I want to dig into with this. But the first thing that I want to dig into is just even as you're talking and telling your story and kind of these milestones. I recently did an exercise where you kind of draw your timeline of like 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, whatever, and keep going. So you draw this timeline and then you mark your milestones on it and you kind of just tie things together a little bit. And it's kind of how when we're listening, and I imagine the audience is doing the same thing, we kind of see this as like this linear thing. Whereas when you started, you're like, yeah, it's this windy story, right? To you, it's this windy story, but to the outside, we're seeing the highlights. And I think we all do that with social media and everything else now.
Right.
Can you talk to, like, you mentioned like the gut feeling that you followed along that journey? I think that's the part of the thing that it kind of helps us view it in that linear form. But can you speak to that? Because to the person who's inside it, it is windy. It's you're twisting, you're turning, you're like trying to grasp at these feelings. What is it about that gut feeling, or how do you tap into that gut feeling along the way?
Yeah. As you're talking, it just reminds me of, the hero's journey, right?
Mm,
Where when you're on the journey, you're on a journey, but you don't know what's going to happen next. And I think the most important ingredients for people to develop on this journey of life is the knowledge of what we have inside of us. Two things. A, the knowledge of what we have inside of us. And the second, the values that we have, the things that matter to us most. And you can feel a value. You can feel it when you're in alignment and you can feel it when you're not.
mm-hmm.
And for me, I didn't have that vocabulary, of course, when I was in my 20s around, I'm making decisions in alignment with my values. That wasn't it. Yeah. I was making decisions in alignment with what felt right, not necessarily good, because sometimes, and I've had the worst jobs you can imagine, like the worst. Sometimes you just got to show up and do the work. Mm. And put up with it. Doesn't feel great. This isn't sunshine and rainbows every second of the day. But if you're working towards something, that is the feeling that you want to stay in alignment with, right? Is that I'm on my path towards something. So through some of those jobs that I had that I didn't like, or circumstances that I didn't like, when I had that sense of purpose, if you will, of moving through whatever was coming my way with a destination in mind. And even if that destination in mind was a feeling at some points, like that idea of like, this is good, but it's not it.
Yeah.
That was, I knew what the not it was, but I didn't know yet what the it was. Does that make sense? So following those internal, I don't want to say voices, but it really is a voice at the end of the day. For me, I feel like it's an internal source, a voice that is the best version of me, and maybe even it's a future version of me. I've done this kind of work before where you picture your life and you write a letter back to yourself. You're 82 years old and you're sitting on your porch and you're thinking back on your life and you want to write a letter to the present day self. What are you going to say? And it's like that sense of I showed up. I used my gifts, my talents, my strengths. I supported people. I gave back. I was good to my community. What I did, the work that I did mattered. You worked hard. You overcame obstacles. Like those are all the things, like to me, that's the it. And as a young person, I really had a sense of that. And I don't know if everybody has that, but I really did. I would say since I was probably about 16 years old, I had a sense of like, there's something on this earth for me to do. And I'm not going to be satisfied until I'm doing it.
Yeah. I think it takes a willingness to tap into and pay attention to even some of the symptoms of what that looks like when you're not living in alignment. Like you mentioned, like sometimes you got to work that crap job and you got to just like push through it and do it. And I think a lot of people feel very confused and conflicted in that, where they're like, do I keep working at this? Do I make a change? And I'm a big believer that, a lot of the anxieties and depressions and overwhelm that we feel in society and in work, and it comes from a misalignment to what you mentioned, which was like people's purpose. Like, what am I working towards with it? That's something that really resonated when you said that, because I think that can help people maybe tap into that as well. Is, well, am I working towards something that is aligned with purpose? Because if I'm feeling anxious every day when I go to work, something's not aligned, right?
Yeah. And that might not be the work. That might
Yeah.
not be. Sometimes we always want it to be an external thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. We want to napalm the external thing and quit the external thing, when really it's the work that we need to do is internal work. They want to quit the relationship. They want to quit the job. They want to move to another city. And it's like, well, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
And you will, if you don't figure your internal stuff out, you're going to bring it to your next job, or you're going to bring it to your next relationship, or it's going to move with you when you move to another city. The work that we need to do before we do, and sometimes there is a step to take on the external side, but the first work we do is to make sure we are aligned, that we are clear, that we are doing that internal stuff. Then you take a look at the outside. But most of society looks at the outside first, and then maybe works on the inside.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you'll probably love this with your history in marketing and branding and stuff too, but I often talk about like what's your like human brand, right?
Yeah.
Because that brand is going to follow you into your career, into your friendships, into your family relationships, right? Like if you're showing up the same way in all those different areas, then like you said, like it doesn't matter if you change your job, you're still going to be stressed. You're still going to be, fighting that same battle with the next person until you actually kind of look internally and figure that stuff out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then taking the lessons, I think, from the day to day. I don't think I would have all the content that I have, from whether that be comedy content or
Yeah.
professional content, without all of the experiences that I've had in my life, whether they were great when they were happening or challenging when they were happening. I took a position as a student very early on, where I always say, at any given time in our lives, we're one of two things. We are either a victim or we're a student. And it's a card that we choose to play. It is ours to make that choice. I'm either going to learn and grow from this, or I'm going to suffer, and it's going to be hard. And if you learn and grow from it, chances are you're probably not going to have to repeat that lesson.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You're either a victim or a student. Yeah, that's powerful. You mentioned like an openness as well, like this openness that you felt of like being open to just like going this way, being open to this opportunity and saying yes to things even when they didn't feel uncomfortable. How important was that just openness and willingness to change throughout your life?
I think that was absolutely vital, and still is vital to my growth to this day. I'm not a yes person in the sense of I'll just say yes to anything.
Yeah.
But I'm a yes person in the sense of when I'm in that season of growth, of movement. So even getting into speaking, a lot of people come up to me and they're like, how do you become a speaker? Because they see me now and they're like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And my answer is kind of like, not that I see myself as a rock star, but it's like, it's the same way you become a rock star. You play gigs everywhere you can. You play for free. You play at the old folks' home. You play at the barbecues and the birthdays, and you do the weddings, and you do it for free, and you do it for $200, and you do it for $300. You do it. You just go. You say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a chance to play? Yes. Is there a chance to speak? Yes. And then on your free time, you practice. Right?
Yeah.
You sit in your room and you play your guitar and you record stuff. And now you get on YouTube and now, you're on Instagram and you are constantly feeding that dream. And that is the same way you get to be a speaker is you say yes. And I did. I said yes everywhere. And when people ask me to speak, I would go and speak. And I've spoken at some hilarious things. I've done comedy in some hilarious places, but you just say yes. And there does come a time in life, and I'm kind of at a spot now where I can't say yes to everything. My schedule just doesn't allow. But I still say yes to a lot of stuff. And sometimes I even do stuff unpaid for charities. And, when it's in alignment or, I don't want to say this too loudly, but sometimes that's how it goes when, you're in your sweet spot and you get to then make calculated decisions as to when you're saying yes. But at the beginning, it's you just get out there and you hustle and you practice and you learn. I mean, I learned and I grew and I read and I listened and I probably listen. I listen thanks to Audible. I listen to probably about 5 books a month. I'm just constantly depositing into this pool so that I can give it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying yes to this.
Yeah.
Um, it resonates so much in, we look at like speaking and that's a big, like you said, it's like kind of like a rock star thing. Everybody looks at that and they're like, oh, I'd like to be in that position. I'd like to be in front of people and stuff. But even in people's careers, like I can even relate to that in my like early on as a massage therapist when I was just building out. That's how I started my career in wellness was as a massage therapist. And I was in an industry that was dominated by women. And so I was like one of few men that were in that industry at that time. And like I knew I was like, I have to say yes to everything. It doesn't matter if I'm driving an hour both ways and making like, paying $20 in fuel there and back kind of thing. Like I'm not making money, but I'm saying yes because I'm building something. I'm getting experience. I'm getting exposure. I'm figuring out who I want to be in this industry. Right. And
Yeah.
I think that's so powerful that you just tapped into is that you just got to do, right? And
Yeah.
then figure out along the way and accept the lessons, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is about doing, I think that was also something that was instilled in me at a young age, just through my parents. All of my parents all 4 of them are entrepreneurs. My brother's an entrepreneur. My sister's an entrepreneur. Like I come from a family of people who get stuff done. There's
Yeah.
nobody else signing the checks here. You make it happen. You eat because you've gone out and gotten the business. And for me, it is ingrained in me and has always been, I think, throughout young adulthood and into now is just is that work ethic. You've got to be active, and I've learned now there is a definite wisdom around the working smarter.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just hustling, because some people are just addicted to the hustle and they look really busy, but they're not getting a lot accomplished. And then there's also the stress of, some people they're stressed about how to do this, and they feel like they've got to do so many more things, instead of really getting into a state where you create the life you want through your own energy. My friend Mandy Ballack, she talks about this idea of believe faster. Instead of work harder, believe faster. So really getting your clarity and your energy in alignment with where you want to go and who you want to be, and investing time into creating that world for yourself.
Yeah.
And now this might sound, I'm on the Wellness Dojo, so I'm assuming we can get a little woo woo,
Yeah, let's
but
go.
that idea, I would not be where I am today for sure without that presence of mind to know that I can manifest and create the path ahead of me, combined with hard work, combined with investment into myself and doing, that practicing and all of that stuff and saying yes, combined with all of that, that is a massive piece that I think we don't talk about very much. And people are talking about it now a little bit, but in the business space, it's not really talked about very much. But it is a huge piece of my success. And arguably, I think almost anybody's success these days is just really knowing they were clear on their path and they created that stuff.
I agree 100%. And it's also something that I've learned through my career as well, like from those early stages of like, yes to everything and grind and hustle, and just wearing that hustle is like, I used to post on my Instagram stories and stuff like, I'm up at 3 a.m. for my first client, and I'm, finishing video edits at 11 p.m. and stuff like that. And like, it was like, I was so proud of like how much I
Right.
was working and how hard I was working. And you're right though, because then that leads to burnout, that leads to anxiety and pressure and all these different things. Whereas when you take the time to actually figure out like, okay, where do I focus this properly?
Yeah.
Then that work becomes a lot less anxious. That work becomes a lot less overwhelming and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, you attract to yourself people and companies and organizations and clients or whatever. You attract with your energy, you are
yeah,
attracting your own success.
yeah,
It's a real thing. Like it was mind blowing to me when I first started to learn about this. And
yeah,
I don't know how people run their lives without that idea of creating what you want
yeah,
mentally.
yeah. And it's funny too, because another thing that I relate so strongly with you is going back to like elementary school. And like I used to get those exact same comments like, Kyle's a great student, but if he could just talk a little bit less in class, or like I was always kind of that class clown that was looking for like being in the spotlight, and always had girls telling me don't show off and like stuff like that, right? Um, is it funny for you now looking back at that as somebody who is on a stage and somebody who is making people laugh and getting paid to do so, um, and just as a career path, is it funny for you looking back at that now, like? We look at that line that's so curvy and stuff, but to look back, it's like, oh, it's so obvious now.
Yeah, it's funny. I talk a little bit about this in some of my keynotes because I do a lot of talking about strengths and values.
Yeah.
And I share my own personal story around my strengths, because what happened for me was I actually had my strengths mislabeled as weaknesses.
Mm.
And I don't think I'm alone in that. So, in my opinion, two things happen with your strengths. You either don't know that they're strengths, like you just think everybody has them. Somebody who's like really organized, they're like, yeah, well, that's a really boring strength. Like that's not a strength at all. That's just being organized. And it's like, talk to somebody who's,
OCD.
yeah, right. Yeah, right. Or it's a weakness, right? That's
Yeah,
the other
yeah,
side is, or it's something that people criticize you for, and you don't even know it's a strength. You think it's a weakness. So that was my case. And it wasn't really until I got into theater school that I realized that I had something special, and that I had something not just special, but something that I could use and monetize, and something that other people wanted and would pay for. And that was a major shift in my life. And so when I look back from a teaching perspective to say, you've got to know what your strengths are, and you've got to be proud of them, and you've got to be using them and have them properly labeled. But when I talk about that, oftentimes I'll have people come up to me afterwards, parents, and say, I'm doing that with my kid.
mm,
I'm not really seeing these things as strengths when they really could be. And they really appreciate that perspective on things. And so I look back sometimes at little Jenny when I'm, in grade school getting in trouble, or teachers telling me, I remember this specific time in grade 3, I had a teacher named Mrs. McDonald who told me that I should be more like one of the other students in the class. Her name was Roxanne.
Yeah.
She's like, why don't you be more like her? She doesn't speak out in class. She literally said this in front of the whole class. Like, I was shamed. So it burned me so deep that as a full-blown adult, I still remember that day. And I remember that feeling of shame and wanting to not be me, right? Being in this position of wishing I was somebody else. And I think that's one of the greatest tragedies of anybody's life, is if you can't love yourself and be proud of yourself, and you don't know all the great and beautiful, amazing things inside of you, then you're not going to be making choices in alignment with those things. Then you're not going to be fulfilled, and you're going to live that life where you hate your job and you hate the people around you because you don't love yourself.
Yeah.
So that's really part of what I'm trying to get this message out as much as I can, to make sure that, and again, I know love yourself is a real cliche, but without that idea of like, I'm awesome and I'm doing life and I'm going to be great and I can do hard things and I can get through these challenges because I'm awesome, because I have these strengths, because I have all this stuff inside of me. I just want everybody to know that they have it in them, and that they can be in alignment and they can live fulfilled. It's not about a paycheck, and it's not about the neighborhood you live in and the car you drive. It's not about any of those things. It's about who you know yourself to be and being proud of that person.
Yeah. Two things really come to mind when you're saying that. The one is like focus, right? And you kind of mentioned like the strengths being perceived as a weakness, but I also think that too often we're weakness centered, right? We're like, where do I need to improve? Where do I need to get better at? Where do I need to, where am I weaker at? And I think there's a real strength, ironically, in just like tapping into your strengths as well, and like doubling down on those strengths. It's like, what am I good at? Oh, I'm good at making people laugh. How can I do more of that?
Yeah.
And then the second part to that, I think, is like focusing on the things that you enjoy on too. Because I think the things that you enjoy more, those are the things that you're probably better at already. Those are probably your strengths, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, my daughter, I love my daughter to death, and I told her at one point, she's only 12, but I told her, I'm like, man, I envy her because she just seems to know exactly who she is, and she doesn't give a shit like what anybody thinks about it. Like she's like said no to friends because they didn't agree with it or they were trying to get her to change and stuff, and it's like it almost makes me emotional because I'm like, man, I wish I had that when I was your age. And I told her,
Yeah.
I'm like, don't ever get rid of that. Like,
Yeah.
be weird, be whatever you want to be. And like, I think that's just such a strength. And like, I really do see somebody like her just creating such an impact on the world because she knows who she is. It's like,
Yeah.
and if you don't let anybody change that and you just tap into that more and more and everything, man, it's powerful, right?
And sometimes what the another tragedy really is we all start out that way.
Mm,
We all start
yeah.
out thinking we're awesome. Like, talk to a 5-year-old. They're like,
Yep.
what are your strengths? I'm good at candy and I'm good at
Yep.
biking and I'm good. Like, they'll list
Yeah.
your strengths off to you in like popcorn.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But then the older we get, somehow we get conditioned, because we do really live in a society where don't be braggy, don't talk about yourself too big, don't, make sure you're polite to everybody, make sure, don't offend anybody. And we put these filters on ourselves. So, I'm so happy to hear that your daughter at 12 years old is still in that space. And we need to keep on reaffirming
Yeah.
our young people and our kids to continue in that space, because the world is going to try and put you in a box somewhere along the line. The world is going to say, like, a little less here, be a little more like that. It's just the nature of how it is out there, whether it's at school with a teacher or in sports with a coach, or it just takes one of those negative coaches to say, you'll never be that, or you can never do that. And it's like that starts to then mask. It's like it puts clay on that beautiful thing that you just talked about. And then there's this negative self-talk that goes in. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves at, 40 years old working a, corporate job somewhere that we were just trying to check boxes so that everybody was happy with us. And we're completely not in alignment with who we want to be and how we want to be living. And we don't even know where we lost that 12-year-old. We don't even know where on the path that happened. Was it through a breakup in university with a relationship, or was it through failing a class somewhere along the line that then we started developing this negative self? Like, there are a million circumstances in our lives that potentially can stop us from believing in ourselves and thinking about ourselves in that way and loving ourselves. And it really is that idea of just making sure that everywhere along the path, we're checking in with, who am I? Who do I want to be? Am I in alignment with that? Is having that consciousness. So to me, that's the lesson to kids, is just always check in with yourself. How are you feeling? How are you seeing yourself? What are you saying to yourself? And remember, you can change that anytime. You can shift that anytime. Or are you thinking this because this is the friend group you're hanging out with? Do we need to change up some of the people you're spending time with? We changed this because this is the boyfriend that you had, that he was talking to you like you were garbage. And now all of a sudden you're talking to yourself like you're garbage. It's like understanding our own power. And this is relevant for 12-year-olds and it's relevant for 52-year-olds.
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
So much. Yeah. Oh, it's so powerful. I'm loving this conversation.
Me
And,
too.
you, Jen, you're a beacon for that, for people, of like tapping into that and just like that intuitiveness of following what your strengths are and what you enjoy. Can you talk to me a little bit about how comedy came into the mix, and maybe even a little bit about your first time doing stand up and how that came to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had always been funny. I always
I can
I
tell.
always loved making people laugh and entertaining people, and call it be the center of attention, whatever it is. But
Yeah.
it was more than that. It wasn't about I need the attention. It was more I had this ability to affect a room. So whether I was in high school at a party and I'm cracking jokes and everybody's just standing around, we're laughing, or I'm, at work now, or even before, I'm in a boardroom and meeting new people and able to just find a little pop of humor to kind of get everybody to settle in and be more of themselves. I use it for connection. I use it for, making friends, breaking down barriers. And I had always, been a fan of comedians, watching comedians, and just, I was so intimidated, because being funny is one thing, but being like owning your funny, and it's almost back to that strength. It's like knowing, like owning your strength and saying, being so confident in that to say, I'm going to go on a stage in a room full of strangers with prepared funniness. So not even just like I'm picking it up just as it's happening. It's like I prepared this. I rehearsed this. I think this is funny shit. and, and then to go stand on stage and have it not work. Like, I was so
Yep.
afraid of like, well, what if I'm not? And again, this is back to any strength that you have. This is the fear of like, but what if I'm not? I want to be an artist. I'm creative, but what if I'm not that good at it? I'm a great singer. Well, what if I'm not that good at it? Whatever that is, it's that fear of what if I'm not?
Mm-hmm.
And I never wanted to find out because I loved being funny. I loved believing that I was funny. So what happened was my daughter ended up in this camp one summer doing, it was like a theater camp. And at the end of the theater camp, they could pick up a public project to do. And I forget what the other options were. I think it was like a little skit or something, or a stand-up, like a 2-minute stand-up.
Mm.
And she was a pretty shy kid. She's still a little bit shy, but way less shy, but she was really shy at this point. And she did it. She got up in front of the whole group of people and parents and everybody and did this 2-minute comedy skit. And it was hilarious. And she said to me, well, now I've done it. Now you can do it. And there's
Mm.
no turning back now. Like there's no not doing it. So I will tell you that I watched a movie shortly thereafter, Bohemian Rhapsody. I don't know if you've seen this movie, but
Yeah.
it changed my life. Like it was profound for me. And there's one scene in particular where he goes into the Mike Myers is the record producer, and
Yeah.
they're about to be they're debating whether or not to put Bohemian Rhapsody on the radio. It's a 7-minute
Yeah.
song.
Yeah.
And he was so confident in this song and in his skill and in his talent that he looked at his producer and he said, "You do not want to go down in history as the person who let Queen go." Like it was like, this is it. And I think in that scene, he does leave. I think that record producer was not the guy who put Bohemian
Yeah.
Rhapsody on the air. And it was that moment that I was like, I need to just believe in myself. I need to just believe in myself. And so the next morning I emailed was it Radio City? Anyway, I emailed a local place here, and they had a comedy night. And if it's your first time, you are guaranteed to get on stage. And I just said, I'm in, and you get a 5-minute set. And I didn't have a set. I'd not written anything,
Yeah.
but I was like, I'm going to do it. So I need a deadline sometimes. So I gave myself a deadline, and he emailed me back with a date, and I wrote my 5 minutes, and I had some friends come, and I got up on stage, and I freaking nailed it. And I absolutely fell in love with that, and that space and that room and the smell and the people and the everything. It was magic. And I'm sad that it took me so long to do it. So it's about 5 years ago now, but it was magic. It was magic. Yeah.
I love that scene too in that movie. It's like just gave me chills when I watched that scene also. It's like it's such a powerful thing of like it didn't matter if the song was good or wasn't good, like he was going to make it good. He's like, this is going to be
He knew it was
successful.
good.
And
He knew it was good.
yeah, yeah,
There was no question in his mind
yeah,
that it was going to be a legend in and of itself. I
yeah,
just believe that. I believe that there was no question in his mind.
yeah, yeah. So cool. So cool. And it is like we do run across people who aren't going to believe in us, and that is tough, but you're going to be your biggest critic, but you have to be your biggest cheerleader as well, I think, too. One thing I do want to touch on before we wrap up here is you mentioned kind of a little bit about mentorship, and that's something that I'm really passionate about. And so I'm curious if there were leaders and mentors along the way that really helped nudge you in the right direction. You mentioned that one client who was a psychologist who kind of nudged you a little bit. I'm curious
Yeah.
if there were other people along the way that really just kind of helped steer you and helped you make those gut decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love the expression. I forget who said it first. I think it was somebody political a long time ago who said it, but he said, we're all turtles on a fence post. And, the indication is that we don't get here alone. And
Yeah.
I've had so many beautiful people that have come into my life that are, I would argue they're probably all still in my life, that at different points along the way, a couple were leaders of mine, bosses. One was that client, Dr. Wayne Hammond, who is still a dear friend and mentor to this day, and still doing great things in this world. And I really I think that it's important when you come across people that take the time to invest in you, or they take the time to see you. They just see you. It's really important to hold on to those people and take the initiative to reach out. I've had over my life now, I've had a couple people be like, "Oh, will you mentor me?" And it's like, yeah, just call me. Like,
Yeah.
I really believe that you can, anybody that's in your vortex that you feel has something to offer, it's up to us to be calling them. And it is on me. I don't think, oh, I've never heard from so-and-so in a long time. It's like, no, I want your wisdom. I want to take you for coffee. I want to take you for lunch. I want to have, a 30-minute phone call with you. So if there are people that feel like they don't have any mentors in their life, I would say, really go and look back into the archives of who it is that have made an impact. And you take the initiative and then go with questions prepared or scenarios, things you want to talk about. If you want some wisdom from them, go for it. And that really, I mean, I've definitely had several people through the journey with what I've done in different areas that have been an incredible support system that I don't talk to every month. For me, it's maybe once a quarter or every 2 quarters, I will reach out. Sometimes it's once a year I might reach out, but it's, yeah. And lately I find I'm actually reaching out to just tell them they're awesome and say thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something really revolutionary in what you just said that for me has been revolutionary, and this is like recent in my life, where it's like oftentimes when you're building, like you're seeking those things, and we're always told like you got to have a mentor to to build you up. If you want to be successful, you got to find those mentors in your life. Puts a lot of pressure on us to like find that right person. And then for me, I've always felt I'm like I feel so needy, like constantly asking people for like, hey, can you give me some advice? Hey, can you help me here? But like what you said, you're not just taking from that person, like you're giving them something too. And if you can really tap into like what am I providing on the other side of this equation, I think that that's a really powerful thing too. And it might help some people to just take that leap. And it's like, yeah, you might ask 5 people and they might say no, right? But you might get that one person and just know that you're giving them something as well. I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And being respectful for their time and their energy and their day and their space. For me, I'm happy to take a call. I've got a few people that will phone me and ask me, people that used to work for me or people that, yeah, mostly people that used to work for me, but just, I'm happy to take a phone call.
Yeah.
They usually send me a text or a DM and just say, hey, do you have 20 minutes for a phone call? I got something going on that I'd really like your insight on. And yes, always yes. Always yes.
Yeah.
Happy to invest in people.
Yeah.
Most people are that way, I find.
I think so too. Yeah. We create stories that tell us that, oh, they
Yeah,
probably don't want to be around me or they probably are
totally.
too
Yeah.
busy and stuff. It's like, well, you
Yeah.
don't know that until you ask, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Um, on that note, I mean, we could talk for, I feel like we could truly talk for hours
Yeah.
and just this has been so fun. Um, where can people find you? What do you got going on? Socials, give it all here.
Yeah, sure. I'm on Instagram, Jenny B _YYC. And my website is jennyb.ca. You can read a little bit more about me, and there's some videos and stuff on there. And I'm in the midst of writing a book right now, loosely titled Making Work Not Suck. So a little bit touching on some of the stuff that we were just talking about at the beginning here is, I know we live in a world where sometimes work does suck. That's the truth. And there's no getting around it. But I also think that we're in a bit of a culture where it's like, just quit your job and go find something else or go do something else or whatever it is. And sometimes that's the right choice, but also sometimes it's not. And I think that there are some amazing tools that we can, as leaders, implement in our workplaces so we're not losing people so fast, and B, that we can implement ourselves, that even if our work environment isn't 100% ideal, we can find our path to alignment and empowerment and purpose and meaning within that job that kind of sucks. So therefore, getting into our day and creating it the way that on our terms, essentially, even though you have an employer and even though there might be boring meetings and annoying people and whatever, a boss that's unrealistic or demanding or whatever that thing is for you, I do think that there is definitely a season and a space where we don't have to waste the day or waste the month or the 6 months that we need to hang on to that job. We can make work not suck for ourselves. We can live life to the fullest each and every day. I just went to a celebration of life on Monday, a couple of days ago, and it was just another one of those reminders to live your life every single day. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We're never guaranteed the next breath. And I think it would be such a waste to sit in a job and quietly quit and dread the next day and just live for the weekend so that you can watch Netflix or whatever it is, so you can escape it, or live till 5 o'clock so you can go have a beer. I think we need to live our lives. And so I'm writing a book about that, about tools and how to do that, and probably some funny stories about things that happened to me while I was not doing that. But so that, all that to say, it's very helpful for me, for listeners, if you want to follow along on Instagram, or if you get to my website, just sign up for I have a once a month newsletter that comes out that talks about all of the insights, all the stuff that I get paid a lot of money to go and travel around and talk about. That's the stuff I'm putting into my newsletter. That's not going to be boring and irrelevant. And again, it's only once a month. So if y'all want to sign up for my newsletter, it really helps. Publishers like long newsletter or long email lists.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be helpful to me. Also, you would get all the information first on pre-release. The book is planning to be launched January 2024.
Nice. I'm excited for that. So
Me
yeah,
too.
everybody please go follow Jenny B and make sure you sign up for that list. That's going to be just a fun book to read, I think. I'm
Thanks.
so
I
excited
hope
for that
so.
to come out. Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks again for being here. Like I said, I wish we had hours and hours to talk, but I know you're very, very busy. But this has been so fun, and I think really, really empowering, really inspiring for people. So thanks once again for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me and just for doing what you do. I know that, we need more people just talking about being the best versions of ourselves out there in this world. So kudos to you for putting in the hard work and creating this and a community and an environment where people can learn and grow. So good for you. Happy to support.
Appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who's been listening and watching. You guys make this show possible, and we'll see you in the next episode. Man, I always have so much fun sitting down and talking with Jenny B. I think she hit the nail on the head with this episode, where we need to spend more time talking about this. We need to spend more time diving into what are our strengths, what are our values, are we in alignment with our purpose? And you guys know that that's something that I'm so passionate about. And if that's something that you want to start to tap into more, please take advantage of our upcoming 6-week mastermind program. This is 6 weeks of intensive coaching where we're going to dive in, get accountability. We're going to talk about the important things and really start to assess our lives and set the foundation to building a successful life, whether that be specific to wellness or other areas of your life. It all relates. And so if you're interested in that, then please check it out on our website, wellnessdojo.ca/events, or check us out on social media on Instagram at Wellness Dojo YYC. Search the Wellness Dojo on all other platforms. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, give us a good rating on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere that you listen to your podcast. And I'll see you in the next episode.